With that said, we'd like to move into our opening statements. Our opening statements will be made from left to right. So we'll start off with opening statements with the Chairwoman Evans.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you, Chairman Owens, and thank you to the Cobb County Democratic Committee for this opportunity and for Cobb County government for providing these facilities tonight. It's an honor to be with you. I'm Stacey Evans, and I am working hard every day and night to be your next governor. And the truth is, I never was supposed to be here in this capacity. Where I started in life did not naturally lend itself to ending up here, but I'm so glad that it did. I was born and raised in Ringgold, Georgia, which is up in the northwest corner of the state, born to a single teenage mother who was only 17 years old when she had me, and today is her birthday. I can probably do the math and figure out how old she is, but I won't tell Mom, I promise. But growing up was difficult. My birth father didn't stick around. We moved a lot. We lived in about 16 different homes by the time I was 18. I remember many times coming home and finding that our lights had been turned out or that our water was not on because sometimes we just couldn't pay those bills. And one time when I was about 12 years old, I remember very vividly getting ready for school, looking out the back window and seeing one of my stepfathers beating up my mother. And I picked up the phone that morning to call the police to ask for help. But the police on the other end of the line told me that they knew my stepfather, and their exact words to me were, "He wouldn't hurt a fly." So they didn't come and help us that day. And that moment taught me a lesson about how much it matters who's in power and what people can do with their power. Luckily, I saw another way as well. I had a high school government teacher that taught me the good that people can do with power. She invited then Governor Miller to come to my high school and tell us about this brand new program in Georgia called HOPE. And he explained HOPE. If you keep up a B average, you can go to any four-year public college for free. And regardless of your grades, no matter what your GPA, you can go to technical college tuition free. So that was the answer for me in changing my circumstances. I went to the University of Georgia, the first person in my family to go to college. I stayed there for law school. I met my husband, Andrew. We've been married coming up on 14 years. We have a beautiful, energetic, brilliant daughter, of course, named Ashley, who's recently 6. I wouldn't have my family if it wasn't for HOPE. I never would have been able to become an attorney and stand up and give a voice to the voiceless in their fight for justice. And I never would have been able to serve in the state legislature, the same body that some 20 years before I got there saw fit to invest in kids like me that would never have been able to access higher education without HOPE. Now I'm running for governor to bring that same hope and opportunity to all Georgia families. Not just hope for higher education access, but also hope that if you work hard, you'll be able to have a good, paying, dependable job. Hope that you'll be able to access health care when you need it. Hope that your kids will go to schools that live up to their promise and allow them to live out their dreams. And hope that we will be a state that is open for business and closed for hate. We have the opportunity to do these things, to bring real hope and opportunity and change to families across the state. And I look forward to earning your vote on May 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. And Leader Abrams, please give us your opening statement, ma'am.
I want to begin by saying thank you to the Cobb County Democrats for hosting this event. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the future that I see for Georgia. It's a future where we know that there's a clear choice to make about the direction we take our state in. Whether we go back to an old Georgia, an old playbook, an old way of doing things, or if we go forward, looking towards the future, making certain that every Georgia family has the freedom and opportunity to thrive. And I'm running for governor because I am a proven leader and a clear choice for the new direction of Georgia. I grew up in a family that struggled. We struggled to stay above the poverty line, but we never struggled to know what's right. My parents made certain we were taught core values: faith, family, service, and responsibility. Those are the values I live by. And I'm proud of the fact that I have taken every day of my life to leave behind me the legacy of those values that my parents taught me. That's why I have fought to make tough decisions as a leader, as a business leader, as an executive in a nonprofit, and as a Democratic leader in the House of Representatives. I did that work to make Georgia better. From Abbeville to Zebulon, from Vinings to Jessup, I've traveled the state of Georgia, first as Democratic leader and then as a candidate for governor, because I want to know what Georgians need. And I'm proud to say that I have a track record that delivers. I know that families are raising children who are not their own, like my own parents are, raising my niece. And because of that, I fought to get $15 million more per year put into the state budget to help grandparents raising grandchildren and to expand their rights. And as a small business owner in the midst of the Great Recession, I worked with the Obama administration to help create or retain more than 2,000 jobs throughout the state of Georgia and help 350 small businesses stay alive and keep their lights on. I know that my record speaks for itself, but I want to tell you a little bit more about what I've done. I have refused to auction off our public schools to private interest. I have refused to stand down when the NRA tried to lift up their issues, and I voted against terrible bills that put our families in jeopardy. But I also fought for hope. When the Republicans were going to gut that program, I fought for our families and I won. 500,000 little 4-year-olds have continued to get to pre-K because of the work I've done. And 100% of African American students still have access to hope. But as the next governor of Georgia, I have bold and ambitious plans, detailed plans for what we do next. Because we have to educate children from cradle to career. We have to build a thriving and diverse economy in all 159 counties. And we have to have a proven leader in the governor's office who does the work to expand Medicaid, to continue criminal justice reform, and most importantly, to protect our communities and lift them up. Because every Georgian deserves the freedom and the opportunity to thrive. And I look forward to talking about how we're going to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. In your opening statement, you mentioned about work that you've done during the recession. However, the recession ended several years ago, but in many parts of the state, including here in Cobb County, several factors such as household income and purchasing power have not rebounded. What policies would you support to help facilitate wage growth, job growth, and upward mobility for all Georgians?
We have to have a state where every family has the freedom and opportunity to thrive. And that's why I'm proud to have issued an economic mobility plan that looks at exactly that issue. It begins by instituting a workers' tax credit to put money into the pockets of families, especially those who are working hard to make ends meet. But it also includes a child care tax credit, a scholarship that helps that helps 0 to 3-year-olds go to high quality daycare. We're excited because that program would permit a family that makes $40,000 a year to have access to $5,700. But more than anything, it's about creating thousands of jobs throughout Georgia. I'm the only candidate who has started small businesses that have helped create additional businesses. And I want to take 5,000 small businesses throughout Georgia and help them create 10 jobs each. Those are 50,000 jobs that will lift up our community and will never leave our state.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. And the same question, Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The truth is, for some families, it doesn't matter whether the government or business predictors are calling it a recession or not. It doesn't feel ever like they're thriving. That's the kind of family that I grew up in, where we were always struggling. And it was very difficult. And there are families like that all across the state of Georgia. We have to raise wages in this state. We have the lowest minimum wage in the entire country, $5.15 an hour. I know we can do better than that. But it's not enough to strive for a higher minimum wage. We need to make sure that more opportunity is available. And that means, first and foremost, making sure the doors of higher education are open to all. And in 2011, the promise of hope was gutted. My opponent co-authored a bill that led to 97% of African American students losing access to full tuition Hope scholarships and led to 40,000 students leaving our technical colleges. That cut off access to opportunity for families to get the education, the job training, and the skills that they needed to get onto a good paying, dependable job and to build the careers that they deserve.
Thank you. And Leader Abrams, she did reference you in that, so you have 30 seconds to respond.
This is a false and misleading attack that is deeply disappointing. Because I worked with Stacey Evans, I asked her to co-chair the Save Hope Committee. I worked with her to sponsor the only successful bill she has ever carried to restore hope. My name has been on every successful bill that she's put out there, and it was because I understood we had to do the right work to save pre-K, technical colleges, and access to hope for all students. That's why 100% of students still have access to hope. That's why African American students don't have to meet standards that are unreliable. But it's also why I'm extraordinarily proud that when the chips were down and we needed to stand up for all of our families, I was the only one standing up and doing the work.
Thank you. Next question.
Mr. Chairman, I think I was invoked in that
I
response.
do
as
believe
well.
you were, so yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was there in 2011. It was my first session. I had come to the state capitol to expand opportunity. I was a product of the Hope Scholarship, never would have been able to go to college without it. Nobody had to tell me how important it was to fight for hope. I was ready to do it from day one, and that's why I did not go in on a deal that would cut hope. You don't expand hope by cutting it. And the truth is 97% of African American high school students lost access to full tuition Hope scholarships, and 40,000 students had to leave our technical colleges. I am sick and tired, just as I know you are, of people trying to take credit for things that good teachers do. And the truth is pre-K was saved because the teachers came to the Capitol and let their voices be heard. That's why we have full day pre-K.
Thank you. Chairman Evans, there's obviously a lot to talk about the Hope Scholarship. However, the fact is not all children are covered. And for many of us that did not receive the Hope Scholarship, the cost of tuition continues to increase every year. What would you do as governor to support legislation that either sets tuition rates or limits tuition increases at public universities in Georgia? And if you would, why or why not?
Well, the most important thing that we can do is to make sure that we are making sure that there's access, and that means financial aid. It means restoring the promise of the Hope Scholarship, that if you make a B, you will have the money that you need to cover tuition at a public college, and that no matter what your grades are, you'll be able to access tuition-free technical college. But the truth is we have to go a step further. We need needs-based aid in this state, real needs-based aid. Because if you can't afford to go to college, it doesn't really matter what the tuition is, whether it's discounted or not. And I am the only candidate in this race that has signed my name to legislation that would expand and open up needs-based aid in this state, because I know how important it is. I know what it's like to piece together a financial aid package. I had HOPE. I had Pell, which is a needs-based grant, and I worked, and I had loans. Students need our help. We need to always be doing what we can to make it easier and not harder so that access and opportunity is deprived to no one.
Thank you. Leader Abrams, same question.
I think we have to continue to set the record straight because, unfortunately, we can't get to good answers if we keep having false attacks and false information. Representative Evans absolutely did carry good legislation, and I give her full credit for helping to restore the technical college piece. But what she always leaves out of the rest of the story is that I asked her to carry that legislation along with Craig Gordon, that I actually negotiated with the governor to make certain that legislation would move forward, and that she thanked me for my, and I quote, amazing leadership in getting that done. That's the kind of leadership I will always carry, because being a leader is not about getting credit, it's about getting the work done. And the work I did on need-based aid for the last few years was to refuse to sign a single piece of legislation that did not guarantee that casino gaming revenues would be used to support need-based aid. Because if you don't get it in writing, it doesn't count. I believe that we have to have debt-free college for all, and I'm the only candidate who has a comprehensive plan for how we provide debt-free college, not only for those who have a B average, but for those C students and those Ds doing the best they can, but who also deserve access to education in the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. Chairwoman Evans, I'm going to give you an opportunity to have a 30-second rebuttal, and then we're going to do our best to get away from this topic.
Well, Hope is so important, and it's become a big issue in this campaign, but the truth is it's always been a big issue to me because it is why I'm sitting here today. Nobody had to ask me to carry that bill. I knew that Hope needed help, and I was there to do it. It's funny in these elections, absolutely there are things that Leader Abrams did during our time in the legislature that I admired, and I did thank her for that. But I did not thank her for working with the governor to cut off my lifeline and the lifelines for tens of thousands of Georgians across the state who needed access to hope. That simply did not happen. Facts are important, and I'm glad that we're getting to some of them today.
Thank you. According to figures from the Department of Economic Development, total film and television spending in Georgia hit a record $2.7 billion last year, which is about 1/3 over the prior year and a tenfold increase since 2008. This has been in large part due to Georgia's lucrative and controversial tax incentives in the industry. To fuel continued growth, do you support the trend of continuing to expand these tax credits, and what or other ways do you feel that we can continue to grow in the sectors of Georgia's economy? Leader Abrams.
I'm proud to have attended Spelman College, and the University of Texas at Austin, and finally to have attended Yale Law School, where I became a tax attorney. And I brought those skills back to Georgia because I know Georgia has the capacity to grow and thrive. And when I served on the Ways and Means Committee in 2008, I served on a special subcommittee put together by the chairman to create that film credit. And I've been proud of the work it's done. But here's why it works. The film credit is not about paying for films to come to Georgia. It's about creating a pipeline of opportunity for people who are already here. And I believe that any tax incentive that we create has to actually pay for itself over time, which is what the film credit has done. But I've also been the strongest advocate for tax accountability legislation, so we know where our dollars are going, how they're being spent, and that every one of our communities, and not just the ones we favor, have access to opportunity. That's why I have put forward a comprehensive plan for economic mobility so that everyone in our state can benefit from these tax incentives. Whether you're a high school student who wants to go get training from IATSE and become someone who works in the film industry, or a worker who's down at Plant Vogel who wants to keep their job. I believe that we should invest in our workers, putting money back into the pockets of our families every single day.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. Chairwoman Evans, same question to you.
Thank you. The film tax credits that we've come up with here in the state of Georgia are one of the best things that we've done. We've grown an amazing industry that has led to the creations of lots of jobs. It's brought incredible economic opportunity and dollars to our tax digest, and we should do everything that we can to encourage the expansion of this program and the continued growth of the industry. But the truth is there's a big threat looming over the success of this industry and all the other great industries that would follow coming to the great state of Georgia. And that is the time that the Republicans spend pandering to the far right of their primary base and promoting this so-called religious liberty legislation, which is simply a license to discriminate. It is hateful, it is wrong, it is a business killer, and it will cause the film industry to leave this state in a snap of a finger. And that's why this election is so important for this and so many reasons, to make sure that we are protecting job opportunities, that we are protecting the growth of this economy. And for the film tax credits and others, we need to always make sure that we're getting the return on the investment. And that's why I want to set up a commission that will continuously study and making sure that we are getting the benefit of every bargain that we make on behalf of the citizens of Georgia.
Thank you. Recently, House Bill 930 was signed into law, which created the state-level Atlanta Regional Transit Link Authority. But as governor, you would be tasked with looking at the overall transportation needs of our state. What are some of the larger transportation and infrastructure needs that we need within Georgia, and what would you do about them? Chairwoman Evans.
Thank you. Georgians have to be able to get where they want to go, literally and figuratively. Government has to invest in the infrastructure to make it possible for upward mobility to exist in the state. That means investments in transportation infrastructure, but also healthcare infrastructure and continual investments in people. When it comes to transportation in particular, we've got to make sure that we are working to create a coordinated regional mass transit system for all of Metro. The county by county system does not work. And I don't know about y'all, but I am ready for transit to come to Cobb. And I have a feeling most of y'all in this room agree with me. And the parts of Cobb where we would put those trains agree with us. And we have got to move forward, and it will take state leadership to do it. But we also need to make sure that transit is not just an Atlanta metro thing. We need the whole state to understand that transit is for all of us, and that it will lead to economic development opportunities across the state. That's why I want to invest in commuter rail lines that connect the smaller cities to each other and to Atlanta, so that all Georgians will have access to transit. All Georgians will have access to opportunities to get to good paying jobs, regardless of what the particular circumstances in their region at that moment may be.
Thank you. And Leader Abrams, same question.
And this is a place where I think we are in absolute violent agreement. We have a responsibility in the state of Georgia to invest in transit, not just in Metro Atlanta, but across the entire state. And that's why in 2015, as the Democratic leader, I negotiated for the first time in Georgia's history, $75 million going into transit in the state of Georgia. I then used my leverage with the governor and with the Republican Party to help push a SPLOST plan that allows local governments to invest. That's critical because part of getting to transit is making certain that every community can do what it needs to do. But I agree that we have to do more than HB 930, because HB 930 doesn't come with investment. It doesn't include any dollars. And so we have to have a governor who's willing to make the right choices to pay for the responsibilities we have. Because it's more than just transit. It's about paratransit for those who are disabled. It's about connectivity for communities that are distant from jobs. But it's also about creating good jobs in those communities using transit as an economic driver. And I am committed to making certain that happens in the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. To another issue that's been talked about quite a bit, which is gaming in Georgia. So Georgia gaming laws are relatively strict as they prohibit wagering on horses, dogs, or any casinos of any type. In fact, the only type of gambling that's legal in the state of Georgia are raffles for charitable organizations. However, there are at least 2 cruise ships, one that's docked in Savannah and the other that is in Brunswick, that offer casino boats that sail 3 miles out into international waters where gambling is considered legal. That, along with the successful Georgia lottery system, seems to suggest that 1, there's an appetite for this, and number 2, there's a certain amount of capacity in forms of gaming for Georgia. So the question is, what type of gaming would you support, under what circumstances, and how would the revenue be dispersed? Leader Abrams.
This is an important topic because we have a crisis in Georgia. We have underfunded our educational system by $9.3 billion. And although Georgia has one of the most generous merit scholarships in the country at $700 million, including a B average scholarship as well as the Zell Miller, we know that we are not doing enough for need-based aid. We know that thousands of our children drop out of school every year because they lack the ability to close that gap. And that's why I have fought for the last few years to make certain that no casino gaming bill passes the Georgia legislature without including need-based aid in the constitutional amendment. It's not enough to put it in the law. Now, I grew up on the Gulf of Mexico, and I know what gaming can do. And I know about those boats because they now pull right up to the coast. But I will say this, I personally am not a huge fan of gaming, but we've already opened that Pandora's box with the lottery. So what I would say is we give the citizens the right to vote, but we make certain that any investment in gaming goes to pay for need-based aid and truly universal pre-K in the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. Chairman Evans, the same question to you, ma'am.
Thank you. We've got a little agreement here too. I support bringing casinos to this state as long as we earmark funds for places where we need to close gaps in the state. And one of the biggest is in needs-based aid for college. That's why I was proud to co-sponsor legislation to allow casino gambling in Georgia if we dedicated revenues to needs-based aid. And I was proud to do that. That is a step in the right direction. You hear a lot about some of the problems that may come from casino gambling. And of course, with any new industry, we're going to have to engage in setting up a regulatory framework to make sure that we are protected and that the ills do not overcome the good that we can do from this industry. But folks of goodwill that are deliberate and determined, I know, can come up with the right framework to do this. And I can't help but remember that when we were discussing whether to allow a lottery in Georgia, there were a lot of folks that popped up and talked about all the great ills that would befall our state if we did so. And the lottery has been a very successful program. And until 2011, hope was an amazing promise for Georgia students. And I am sure that we can work it out so that we get the best of both worlds here.
Thank you. Students that have dropped out of high school are 3 times as likely to be incarcerated than their other school-age peers. What can the state do, and particularly you as governor, to reduce the flow of students into the prison or school to prison pipeline? Chairwoman Evans.
Thank you. Criminal justice reform is one of those areas where we have to give Governor Deal some credit. He has made us a leader in criminal justice reform, but we've got to continue to do more because there is more work to do. And I think most families probably have a personal experience with the criminal justice system, and mine is no different. I had a brother that struggled for years with drug addiction, and during his time of addiction, he was in and out of prison probably 30 times. And I'm very proud of him today. He's clean and sober, but for a while he struggled. And we've got to make sure that we're treating drug addicts like folks who need treatment and access to help and not as prisoners. We need to make sure that we end private probation and private prisons. There should never be a profit motive to lock up our citizens. We need to end the cash bail bond system for low-level offenses. And if you are behind bars, we need to make sure that you get access to GED training, to job training, to technical education, so that when you leave prison, if it's not a life sentence, then it's not a life sentence, and you're able to get onto a good paying job. And that's also why we have to ban the box. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader Abrams, same question.
In 2011, I was proud to co-sponsor the criminal justice reform legislation that has led to incredible and remarkable changes in the way we do business in the state of Georgia when it comes to criminal justice. But we have to protect that progress, and we have to ensure that the next governor is committed to moving things forward. I'm the only candidate up here who's put out a bold and detailed plan for criminal justice reform, a comprehensive plan that comes from my personal experience. A brother who has served time twice in state prisons because he lacked access to the mental health supports he needed to take care of himself when he got out of jail. But I also believe that we have to raise the age at which a child can be charged as an adult. And we have to decriminalize being poor in the state of Georgia. It should not be a crime to commit a traffic offense, and you should not go on probation because you burned leaves in your front yard. We have to expand access to transitional programs because we have to believe that people who get out of prison deserve reentry. And that begins in elementary school and in K through 12. And unfortunately, we have kindergartners who can be suspended, and that puts them on the path to the school to prison pipeline. That is why I fought so hard to preserve the pre-K program in the state of Georgia, which Governor Nathan Deal gave me credit for and said that he wouldn't have expanded it and restored it to full power had it not been for my efforts.
Thank you. Last question. As Georgia's influence continues to grow nationally and globally, it is incumbent upon the next governor to ensure that the citizens and businesses remain safe. With potential targets such as our Fortune 500s, the world's busiest airport, and a massive port in Savannah, what is your plan to safeguard our citizens and assets both in the physical and cyberspace? Chairwoman Evans.
The job of governor, first and foremost, is to keep us safe. And that means safe from physical harm and also safe from cyber attacks. And on day one of my administration, I want to do a top-down audit to make sure that our systems are safe from outside attacks from those that would want to do us harm. And we have incredible resources here within the state of Georgia to do this. We have the Cybersecurity Center in Augusta, Georgia. We have Georgia Tech right down the road here in Metro Atlanta. We need to take advantage of these resources and make sure that we are always including experts at the table when we are determining how we're going to keep our systems safe. This also comes to be relevant in our voting systems. We need to have absolute confidence that when we go to vote, our vote is being cast and counted, and also counted for who we cast it for. That's why I support bringing a verifiable paper trail to Georgia's voting machines. That's why I think that we should have automatic voter registration so that we can pay for this paper trail and to keep our system safe and up to date.
Thank you. Leader Abrams, same question.
I think in addition to leveraging the great work that's being done by Fort Gordon and cybersecurity, we have to use this as an opportunity to train our young people for new jobs and new opportunities. That's why I'm so proud of the work that I've done on public education. I have fought to defend public education against our friends and our enemies, and I'm the only candidate who has never voted to auction off our public schools, because we can use those schools to provide training and opportunities for our young people, and we can use our small business investment to help young people and entrepreneurs invest in cybersecurity. I also believe that we have to look forward to the other challenges facing our communities. Atlanta was recently under a ransomware attack. The challenge we have is that throughout the state, a lot of our smaller communities can't possibly afford to pay that ransom. And so the state of Georgia, under the leadership of the governor, has to have a statewide audit, but also work with GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association, and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia to do an assessment of local government capacity to respond to those attacks and to make certain they are all hardened their infrastructure to support cybersecurity throughout the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. At this point in time, we'll go into our closing statements.
I was actually invoked in that last response.
Go ahead.
I have my 30 seconds. Thank you. My opponent has continuously misrepresented my record on public education. I am a product of Georgia's public schools all the way from kindergarten until I got my law degree at the University of Georgia. I understand that public education is paramount to upward mobility. I have never voted for vouchers. I have never voted to privatize our schools, and statements to the contrary are simply not true. Facts are important, y'all. I am a staunch supporter of our public schools, and I want to invest in a community school model so that all of our students can do their very best in the classroom.
Thank you. Leader Abrams, 30 seconds.
When I talk about auctioning off our public schools, I'm talking about the Opportunity School District, which included specific language that would have allowed private interests to take over our public schools, including closing them down and auctioning off the buildings. That is what I'm talking about. Because you can't just read the top and the headline, you've got to read the fine print. And as the minority leader, I did my best to guide my caucus and make certain they had all the facts. Unfortunately, in this election, we've had misleading attacks where the facts didn't follow, or we cherry-picked the facts and the statistics that we like. I've made it my mission to make hard decisions after methodical, careful consideration, and I'm proud of the record that I have and the fact that I've been endorsed by the Georgia Association of Educators for my strong, staunch public advocacy for public education.
Thank you, Leader Abrams. At this point in time, we have to go into closing statements. So, Leader Abrams, would you please 1 minute for a closing statement?
Absolutely. Again, I want to say thank you to the Cobb County Democrats and to everyone watching. Elections are about choices, and I am the very clear choice in this race because I know that our state needs more than just hope. We need a proven leader who brings to the table the experience to create the jobs we need, to educate bold and ambitious children from cradle to career, a leader who helps small businesses grow and thrive throughout the state, and a leader who is committed to the expansion of Medicaid, to criminal justice reform, to investment in advanced energy, and to making certain that our communities are protected and safe. That's the job that I want because I know that if we work together, we can transform the state of Georgia. Diversity is our strength, and it should never be used as a weapon. And that's why I'm proud to have been endorsed by a range of organizations who protect the LGBTQ community, Planned Parenthood, and most recently, the 2.5 million domestic workers in the country have come to Georgia to endorse me. I've stood with Mahinte and our Latino communities and with our Asian American communities, and I will always stand with diversity in the state of Georgia, and I will always move to make certain that every Georgian has the freedom and opportunity to thrive.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Evans, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Thanks again, everyone, for being here and all those who've tuned in to watch us at home. I'm running to bring hope and opportunity to Georgia families. Hope that the doors to higher education will be closed to no one because we will restore the original promise of hope. A B will get you tuition at a public college or university, and technical college will be open to everyone and it will be tuition free. But also hope that if you work a full-time job, you will not have to struggle in poverty because we're going to raise wages in this state and stop being the last in minimum wage across the state of this country. That we all will be able to have access to good paying jobs no matter where we live. That if you want to start or grow a small business, you can do so. That our kids will have the education that they deserve. That we will cover more Georgians with insurance, starting with expanding Medicaid. And that we will keep our state one that is open for business and closed for hate. But it's not just enough to fight against the bad. We've got to be proactive. And that's why I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race that introduced comprehensive civil rights protections to make sure that all of us were protected against discrimination in public accommodations and employment. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Your commitment to public service to our state is something that we're all grateful for, and we look forward to being able to call one of you Madam Governor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That brings us to the close of this evening's forum. I'd like to remind you that early voting has started. Please go out and vote May 22nd. Thank you for your time, and thank you to the Cobb County government for allowing us to have use of this facility. My name is Michael Owens. I'm the chairman of the Cobb County Democratic Committee, and on behalf of all Democrats in Cobb County and the Cobb County Democratic Party, I'd like to thank you for tuning in this evening.